One of my favorite things about Together We Bake is the togetherness of the women. To see us all come together and accomplish a task for the day.
We get along just like, I guess, like we would all be sisters.
Flying dough balls.
Right.
From this thing right here. When we would go to put it out, it would go flying on the floor because we hadn't got it yet, but we got it now.
July of '05, I was very high on crack cocaine, and I walked into Kinko's on Washington Street and took the cash register.
I started using drugs at age 28. Me and my son's father had split, so I took that really hard. So I was for 12 years, and kind of went off the deep end a little bit, and that led to stealing from Walmart, and I stole a couple checks and wrote them, so I had forgery and uttering charges.
I wrote $10,000 worth of checks on a closed account, and I was writing the checks for opiates.
Prison really doesn't teach you anything. It doesn't give you goals, or, you know, they let you go and then you're just out there.
When I got to the guest house, everybody kept saying they were going to Together We Bake, you know, and I was like, well, what is that?
Actually, Stephanie and Trish came in and they said bacon, and I jumped all over it because I like to be in the kitchen anyway, so.
So tonight we're talking about the state of Black cinema, and one of the questions that came up in so many of the conversations I had with friends is defining what Black cinema is. What do you guys think that is? When someone says Black cinema or Black films, what are they talking about? What does that really mean? Have we ever defined that term?
Well, I'll start first. The way we define it, and when I say we, my award show, the criteria that we established was that we looked at films that were either written, produced, executive produced, directed, or the point of view, or POV, was strictly African American. So every year as we look at nominees, we kind of work from that kind of spectrum, and then we kind of expand it out. So that's kind of what I would consider it to be.
Sometimes my work thinks about time in a very infinite way, or a cyclical kind of way of thinking about time, and sometimes I represent time as a finite thing. Time for me is more about the way that we're constantly reminded that we're mortal. Whereas a lot of artwork is about remaining very static, I think my work is about trying to embrace change. Maybe it's the stage of life that I'm in, but I'm thinking a lot about the word future and how the word future can be just as ambiguous as now.
Hey guys, do you mind if we stop here?
Are you tired already?
Yeah, I know, I'm sorry. It's just my knee, you know, and maybe I'm getting old. I don't know, my back is sore too, so I don't know.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's bad.
Hey, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, how are you?
What's wrong?
My knees and my back is killing me, so that's why I'm stopping.
I'm a yoga instructor. I might have some yoga poses might help.
Okay, cool.
First, let's take our shoes off.
All right.
Inhale up, exhale, fold, squat. Make sure your feet are far enough apart. Let the head hang, shoulders come down in between the knees. Breathe and relax. Nice deep breaths here.
A partir de este momento, usted está en sintonía con el programa internacional Música y algo más.
Hola amigos, muchas gracias por sintonizarnos una vez más en esta semana. Con ustedes, Julián Mejía.
Y Sonia Aguilar, gracias por dejarnos entrar a sus pantallas.
Y con ustedes, Marilyn Bu, gracias por sus mensajes por Facebook, por Twitter, y para toda la gente que se acaban de mudar a Washington, D.C., bienvenidos a la capital de los Estados Unidos.
simplest reason as to why people are not fans of Superman is, and I'm a huge Superman fan, there aren't a lot of great Superman stories.
Yeah.
I can probably count on both hands, like the books I would flat out recommend to people. And that's a shame.
But the great Superman stories are truly great.
Oh, absolutely.
Really the problem with Superman, truthfully, is that the same people who don't like Superman also won't allow Superman to change. And actually, Stan Lee, when he was asked which DC comic character would you never want to write, and he said Superman, because that's an inherently unflawed man. He's the ideal person that we all want to be. He's the Ubermensch. He's the Superman. And so you can't let him show flaws. You can't let him be a human being, which is what he ultimately wants. And you know, that's where the best stories have kind of developed out of, where you can see that being, you know, the most powerful being on earth isn't all it's cracked up to be.
The internet moved so fast that people didn't understand that just because something appeared on their screen and they could right-click on it and they could take it, didn't mean they should take it or they were allowed to take it. And it's been, you know, the RIAA gotten a lot of heat because they sued thousands and thousands and thousands of IP addresses. You remember when all the news stories were like, RIAA sues grandma?
Yeah, right.
Okay. Well, they did that and made, I think they spent $62 million in takedown notices and in cease and desist letters and in actual federal litigation. And I think they had about $3 million in settlements. And it was sort of a loss leader. They didn't do it to make money. They did it to educate the public and to say, yeah, you're not going to like us because we're suing grandma, but you have to understand it's this constant taking of films, this BitTorrent, the sharing. There's no concept of sharing. That's not a legal concept. That's something that just people came up with because they could take everything and they needed to name it something that sounded pretty nice, and so sharing it became, and that it's just copyright infringement.
In the fall, the summer, and the spring, I'm out at the Tacoma Park Farmers Market, and my sister is a farmer. She's an organic farmer in Spearville, Virginia, and she sells at the Tacoma Park Farmers Market. So I go there and I get to hang out with my nephews, and I juggle for all the kids at the market, and I've created quite a following. I'm very big amongst the 2 to 7-year-olds in Tacoma Park. One of the best ways to learn how to juggle is to get a good instructor, and I have a great instructional video, if I do say so myself, on YouTube, and if you type in "you can juggle," I should be the top hit, and I will teach you how to juggle step by step. It's about a 10-minute video, and if you practice 20 minutes a day for maybe 2 weeks, you'll definitely be able to juggle.
Our advice is always keep the financial part of it in mind. Do what makes you happy, do what you love, but also have a way to pay the bills.
Right. Would you add anything to that, Alexis?
Yeah, I think a lot of people that we interviewed during our initial road trip, lots of people said that they had this period where they'd come up with this idea of what they wanted to do or a career change, and then so they were doing their dream work at the nighttime, on the weekends, and off hours, and then during the day, they're going to their 9 to 5, they're taking care of their kids. So it's kind of like a double life. And hopefully what you want to get to is that you'll be able to do the dream stuff during the day.
Claro que sí, una invitación para que siempre estén atentos a Teleactiva, llevándote los mejores eventos, siempre. Bueno, un saludito a toda la gente, esperamos que estén aquí esta noche, sean presentes a Copacabana, porque ahora se hace historia con la fórmula.
Ya vuelvo con más. Y ahora me encuentro junto a una personalidad de los medios de comunicación. Él es Roberto Cienfuegos, que ha tenido la oportunidad de entrevistar.
Let's get together, let's work together, let's make something happen. So I really like that element. That's a hope for me, is that, you know, again, we're growing together.
I have a fear that lack of awareness of this particular issue.
There's a fear that we won't get our act together.
You know, my concern is that people will not get it in time.
I think one of the biggest fears that I have is that we're not going to catch it in time, and by the time we really, get together and really try to do something about it, that it's going to be, too late for a lot of us.
That things will continue at status quo or get worse, and that nothing will change.
Yes. Yes, we can come in. I was the school counselor. We're coming in for a parent-teacher conference tomorrow.
Mitchell, you can do the math. You just gotta manage your time. You're so creative, and you're such a good writer.
I don't care how smart you are. You don't do the work and you're gonna fail.
Mitchell, we're all here to help you. You just have to help yourself.
You can do the hard stuff. All you have to do is get organized.
No computer, Xbox, or basketball until your grades improve. You're grounded.
We just want the best for you, Mitchell.
Hey, what's up, Mitchell?
Oh, hey, Mitchell.
Hey.
How did your essay turn out?
What essay?
To you is, could we please do a rigorous cost-benefit study against electric overhead buses or natural gas buses, and not compare streetcars with nothing at all, which is some of the comparisons we're seeing, or not compare streetcars with other bogus comparisons. Anyway, okay. I'm open-minded at the end of the day. If it could be possibly shown that a streetcar is better than a bus, I would go with it. But all my evidence, and I have a background as a World Bank economist, I've seen a lot of bogus studies in my life. I'm just curious. I'm just curious. I would love to see a rigorous study done impartially, not by someone who's already in bed with a streetcar. Could you please do it?
Please.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to direct that one over to the staff to talk about the studies that have been done.
So I am from New Orleans, and we're happy to have y'all here on Mardi Gras Day. Obviously, we have jazz music. You can have a muffalata, shrimp jambalaya. We're having crawfish Monica. So we're going to have you well fed and all soaked up with good libations.
So they've got food tickets, and you get 3 different types of food, New Orleans authentic foods. And then they have drink tickets that you can get to get really yummy. I had a bananas Foster. Don't tell anybody.
We have close to 1,500 beads we're going to be throwing tonight. So we really want to be able to show what they would experience if they were down there today.
The Syphaxes originated from Tanzania, Africa. They were engulfed as slaves. They were like taken away from that area as slaves by the British, brought to the UK, and from the UK they were broken up. Some US people came and brought them to the east coast of the US, Virginia, and the other half more or less stayed in the UK.
Charles Syphax is largely regarded as the patriarch of the family in regards to the history here.
Charles Syphax worked at Mount Vernon, and he was the right-hand man to George Washington, our first president. And he was his body servant, which is what you call a bodyguard today.
Kind of like he's spying on him, because every time Roebuck has tried to run, he's been right there or close to him. Peter Griffin, the 6'1", 230-pounder. Loss of 2 there, 2nd and 12, ball on the 43. Roebuck stepping up in the pocket, looking to his right side. This one might be intercepted, and it is. There's a big interception by Williams, going down to the far sideline. Still on his feet. Flag on the play, but touchdown Washington Lee. We'll see what happens.
A simple mistake, a complex problem. Discovered in the late 1800s and later patented by Dow Chemical, polystyrene was given its commercial name in 1941, styrofoam. Single-use styrofoam has long been associated with cheap or inexpensive food. But what people don't understand is that styrofoam leaches styrene, which is stored in the human body, and the body cannot break it down. Adding to the downside of single-use polystyrene, it is very difficult to dispose of, given the time it takes to decompose and the challenges with commingled polystyrene. The health and environmental hazards downstream up to this point have not been quantified.
And the good thing about high school games I've seen, and you guys, there's no loser really when it comes down to it. Only the deciding factor is who wins the game. There are a lot of unsung heroes in this game. And in your words, who do you think is the young unsung hero?
Man, I think Peter Griffin and Duquay Harris, I got to give it to both of them for Washington Lee. One on the defensive side, one on the offensive side, because I think what Peter Griffin did to the Yorktown offensive line, and they made the line had to watch him the whole game. They had to watch where he was coming from. He was coming from the left side, he was coming from the right. He pulled a stunt a couple of times, and he was all over Roebuck. And then Duquay Harris, the patience and the poise he has back there in the Washington Lee backfield and waits for that hole before he goes. He's a much different runner, Kevin, than MJ Stewart. He sits there and he'll wait and bide his time before he finds a hole and just goes for it. And of course, Sam Appel, the quarterback for Washington Lee, was also great. I'd give it to all three of those guys. Sam Appel, the senior quarterback, played for Josh Shapiro now for 4 years, was a starter for 3 of those years. The confidence he has in Appel. And that was the great thing at the end of that game, to see Appel when they finally won. And they went into victory formation and that clock went down to 0. What did he do? He went straight in a beeline to Josh Shapiro and picked him up and gave him a big hug.
Now,
Oh, that's wonderful.
Isn't that great?
Yes.
Maple syrup and the balsamic vinegar?
Yeah, the sweet and sour. It's really lovely. All of Chef Han's recipes can be found on Senior Services website at www.seniorservicesalex.org. And I want to thank you again, and this has just been wonderful.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Great salad.
That looks so beautiful. Oh, I love it.
It's all about simplicity.
Yes, it's wonderful. Thank
Welcome back to Senior Living in Alexandria. We're here with our guests Mary Lee Anderson and Jan McAdoo. Before we close this segment, though, we'd like to call on Mary Lee to give us a little bit of the highlights of the Senior Law Day, please.
Sure. We got together with a very large crowd.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about how the funk started. I mean, can you share some insight on that?
How the funk started? Shoot. Man, that's a crazy question, because don't nobody really know how it started. Not really, man. I mean, you trace back to, George's history, for instance, or Sly Stone. Then it's a generation of people before those guys who they listened to. So you really would have to find out and go back through the decades and see who studied who to create what they got. You know what I mean? And as far as I was concerned, like, it's something that was always, funk was never something that was started up. It was always here. It was an energy form that was probably just adapted by different beings, and as you grow older, you start to realize that it truly is something that if you have it, you have it, and if you don't, you don't.